My name is Mark, and everything started one evening while my wife and I were getting ready for a barbecue. Monica was almost finished when I made a casual remark about her outfit. I told her that her t-shirt looked a bit worn and suggested she swap it for something else. A short while later, I noticed she was changing her bra. Curious, I asked what was going on. She explained that she planned to wear a black sleeveless polo and needed a different bra to go with it. I laughed and asked why it mattered. She replied that the one she had on would show through the shirt. I joked that I wouldn't mind seeing it and added, teasingly, that being a woman seemed pretty easy given how good she looked. Monica immediately pushed back, saying that people always assume it's simple, but in reality, it takes a lot of effort. I laughed and said something like, "You mean because of things like choosing the right bra?" She frowned slightly and told me, in her own words, that maybe someday I'd actually understand. Hopefully, I said, brushing the comment aside. A couple of weeks later, I came home from a business trip. Our daughter was staying overnight with my in-laws, and Monica welcomed me with a glass of white wine. We sat and talked about the past few days, and I assumed the evening would be relaxed and pleasant. Then she said, "Mark, take a look at this flyer from school. It's about an upcoming fundraiser. They're looking for some brave dads." I laughed and replied that I fit that description perfectly. She smiled and said she thought so too, adding that she'd already told Mrs. Caldwell I would participate. Our daughter went to a private school that hosted a big fundraiser every year, usually involving parents. Mrs. Caldwell, the founder and headmistress, was a strong-willed woman who had built the school into one of the best in St. Paul. I always found her a little intimidating. The flyer read, "St. Paul City School is seeking 8 to 10 brave dads for this year's fundraiser. The event will be a formal dinner at the Four Seasons Hotel, featuring entertainment in the form of a womanless beauty pageant. Our brave dads will participate in a swimwear round, an evening wear presentation, and a short talent showcase. This will be the highlight of the night. Dads are encouraged to step out of their comfort zones and support the school. It's all in good fun, and it will be a memorable evening. Please contact Mrs. Caldwell's office to volunteer." I burst out laughing and set the flyer down, wishing them luck finding volunteers. Monica smiled sweetly and said I'd need luck myself. Confused, I asked what she meant. She calmly told me she had already RSVP'd on my behalf and informed Mrs. Caldwell that I was excited to participate. When I repeated Mrs. Caldwell's name in disbelief, Monica confirmed it. She explained that I had been the very first dad to sign up, that Mrs. Caldwell thought I was absolutely wonderful for helping, and that since I'd once joked about how easy it was to be a woman, this was my opportunity to experience it firsthand. I realized this was payback for my earlier teasing. I told Monica honestly that I really didn't want to do it. She shrugged and said that she thought I was tough enough to handle dressing up for a good cause. She added that if I truly didn't want to go through with it, I could call Mrs. Caldwell myself and withdraw. I asked if she could make the call instead. She flatly refused, knowing full well that I didn't have the nerve to cancel on Mrs. Caldwell and would rather go through with the pageant than make that phone call. Feeling cornered, I asked how I was even supposed to start preparing. Monica smiled, took my hand, and said we should go upstairs because she had everything planned. When we reached the bedroom, I saw one of her swimsuits laid out, along with 2 evening gowns and several elegant outfits. My stomach tightened as she handed me her electric razor and told me it was time to deal with my leg hair. I went into the bathroom and carefully shaved my legs, deciding while I was at it to clean up under my arms as well. When I came back, Monica was holding a white one-piece swimsuit with a matching sarong. She helped me step into it and pulled it into place. I could feel my face warming with embarrassment. She laughed softly and assured me that makeup would take care of my flushed face. She wrapped the sarong around my waist and told me to look in the mirror. I admitted that I felt a little ridiculous. Monica reminded me that we still had 2 full weeks to get me ready. She noticed a bit of chest hair visible and commented that it would need to go as well. Then she picked up one of the dresses and suggested we start trying them on. I sighed, nodded, and agreed. Monica passed me a pair of pink satin underwear and said that since she was tall and I was fairly slim, there was a good chance I could fit into some of her dresses. I made a face as I put them on and reached for one of her evening gowns, but she stopped me immediately and told me not to rush. I asked what the problem was. She informed me that pantyhose came first and told me to put them on. I groaned and told her she was being ridiculous. She replied firmly that if I was going to do this pageant, I was going to be dressed properly, and that absolutely included pantyhose. I told her I didn't care about being proper. She reminded me that Mrs. Caldwell cared, and so did she, and explained that I would be doing everything exactly the way she would when wearing these outfits. She handed me a pair of sheer black pantyhose. I sat at her vanity and tried to copy the way I'd seen her put them on countless times. Carefully, I worked each leg in, slowly pulling them up until they reached my thighs, then eased them into place around my waist. She smiled approvingly and said I looked like I knew what I was doing, adding that this whole transformation thing seemed oddly natural for me. Next, she slipped a bra onto me, padding it with extra pantyhose, explaining that we'd find something more suitable later for the actual pageant. Then came the makeup. It felt like it took forever as she carefully worked on my face. When she finally finished, she placed a brunette wig on my head. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My features looked softer, more refined, and far more feminine than I ever would have expected. She handed me a long black slip, and I stepped into it. The smooth fabric slid over my legs, and I was surprised by how pleasant it felt. I walked toward the bed, suddenly very aware of the garment against my skin. Monica then lifted the first gown, a black silk taffeta dress I'd always admired on her, and I couldn't believe I was about to wear it myself. She held it open and I stepped in. The slip bunched up, so I gathered it and tucked it neatly into the skirt. I slid my arms into the sleeves, and Monica zipped me up from behind. To my surprise, it fit remarkably well. The bodice was black silk with subtle sequins, the sleeves were short and puffed, and the taffeta flowed all the way to the floor. I studied myself in the mirror and was genuinely shocked. I didn't look ridiculous. In fact, I looked good. Really good. For a brief moment, the thought crossed my mind that I might actually have a shot at winning the pageant. Monica smiled and handed me a pair of black high heels. I sat down and struggled a bit to get them on, and after a few wobbly attempts, she helped me steady myself. I walked around the room, feeling the gown swish around my legs. When I turned, the skirt flared in a way pants never could. She added earrings and a necklace, completing the look. Sitting back at the vanity, I crossed my legs slowly. The soft sound of the fabrics brushing against each other was completely new to me, and strangely enjoyable. Monica broke the moment by telling me we weren't done yet and that I needed to stand up. I did, and she immediately unzipped the gown. I asked what she was doing, suddenly realizing I didn't want to take it off. I'd grown attached to it faster than I expected. She told me I still had more outfits to try. I protested, pointing out that I'd already worn the swimsuit and this dress, and asked if this one wasn't good enough. She laughed and said that was exactly how a man would think. She explained that they needed to find what looked best on me, not just what worked. She also reminded me that I needed something for the talent portion and said she assumed I'd play my guitar. I agreed that the guitar made sense. I'd been playing for years and knew a few classical pieces that would fit the setting perfectly. I took off the black gown and slip, and Monica handed me pink pantyhose, which I put on along with a camisole. She then gave me a long pink skirt with a small slit in the back and a beaded pink wool top. As I walked around, I felt stiff and awkward in the tight skirt. That's when Monica stepped out of the bathroom wearing the black taffeta gown I had just removed. I asked her what she was doing. She said she suddenly felt like wearing the same dress her husband had just worn. I told her she looked far better in it. She thanked me and said that while she appreciated the compliment, I looked good in it too. She added that I should wear it for the pageant, because the pink outfit was a little over the top. I agreed with her. Next, she had me switch back into black pantyhose and try on a navy suit with an A-line skirt, a double-breasted jacket, and a white silk blouse. Monica decided it looked too stiff. We tried another dress with a fresh pair of pantyhose, but that one didn't work either. Finally, I was back in black pantyhose once more, and Monica dressed me in a black silk, backless dress. It looked fantastic and felt lighter and easier to move in than the formal gown. As I walked around, it flowed effortlessly with each step. I turned to her and asked if this one might finally be the right choice. Monica nodded and said that it probably would work, but we'd still need to sort out bras, since each outfit required something different. I told her I'd keep that in mind and asked if I could go back to being myself again. She immediately shut that down, saying there was no way she was done yet. She explained that she still had to teach me how to walk, talk, and sit properly, everything from posture to small gestures. She joked that she couldn't have me moving around like an athlete charging across a field. For the next couple of hours, she coached me on moving with more grace. She made it fun by teasing me the whole time, laughing whenever I slipped back into my old habits. The toughest part turned out to be playing my guitar while wearing a dress. I had to concentrate on keeping my knees together, which threw off my focus, and the padded bra kept bumping awkwardly against the guitar body. When we were finally done, Monica surprised me by handing me a short pink nightshirt to sleep in. I hesitated, but she draped it against my shoulders and assured me I'd be comfortable. I gave in and put it on, and the evening ended on a warm, reassuring note. The next morning, as I changed out of the pink nightshirt, I told Monica I was starting to have second thoughts about the contest. While I'd enjoyed the preparation more than I expected, I didn't want to embarrass myself or her or our daughter, Grace. She waved off my concerns and said Grace already knew about the pageant and was thrilled about it. She added that I wouldn't embarrass her at all and asked why I should feel ashamed anyway, especially since it would score me points with Mrs. Caldwell. I mentioned my friends. She reminded me that we didn't really have many friends connected to the school. I brought up the Smiths, pointing out that Kevin and I had known each other since childhood. Monica laughed and said I didn't need to worry about Kevin, insisting he'd understand. I told her again that I truly didn't think I could go through with it. She calmly replied that if I wanted to back out, then I'd have to call Mrs. Caldwell myself. She knew exactly how trapped I felt and didn't hide the fact that she was enjoying it. She then announced that we were going shopping that evening for the contest. Grace would stay with the Smiths, but she wanted to see me dressed up before she left. I admitted I didn't follow her logic. She rolled her eyes and explained that I'd be shopping as a woman, and that it was the best way to practice. At that point, I started seriously questioning how far this had gone. The day seemed to crawl by, but at 3 o'clock Monica declared it was time to get ready. I followed her instructions and removed the hair from my chest. She laid out a full outfit: pink underwear, a matching bra, white pantyhose, a light pink blouse, and a pink suit. Grace watched with delight as Monica applied my makeup, giggling the whole time. She laughed even harder when I slipped into Monica's pink heels and asked her opinion of how I looked. It took real effort to work up the nerve to step outside. We got into the car, and I drove to the Smith's house. I told Monica I wasn't getting out of the car and warned that if they tried to bring anyone outside to see me, I'd drive off immediately. They went inside, and after what felt like forever, the front door finally opened. A woman stepped out wearing a charcoal grey wool sweater, a white blouse, and grey tights. She looked a little uncomfortable as she came down the steps. Then it hit me, I knew her. Or rather, I knew him. That woman was my friend Kevin. I turned off the engine and opened the door, carefully stepping out and adjusting to the heels. I asked if he was in the contest too. We both turned red. He told me yes and said he was pretty sure our wives had planned this together, even pitching the whole womanless pageant idea to Mrs. Caldwell. I admitted it was really my fault for teasing Monica and apologized for dragging him into it. I added that he actually looked great. He returned the compliment and asked me to turn around. I did, and he gave an approving whistle. Just then, Monica appeared with Kevin's wife, Betty. Betty wore a black skirt with a white top and looked just as polished and confident as Monica. She teased me by calling me Marktine and asked if we were ready to shop. I muttered that it seemed like our wives had completely lost their minds. Betty immediately shot back that we could stop the car and ask anyone on the street who they thought was acting irrationally. Monica directed me toward North Lincoln Avenue and told me to pull over in front of a boutique called Denise's. The display window featured mannequins in lingerie, one of them with a clearly masculine face. Stockings and bras were prominently arranged. I asked what kind of store it was. Betty explained that she'd seen it featured on the news. The shop specialized in women's clothing designed for men, offering fittings and makeovers. She smiled and suggested we go inside to see what they had to offer. As we climbed out of the car, both Kevin and I suddenly became very aware of ourselves and nervous about being seen in public dressed this way. We instinctively tried to stay behind our wives, who found our discomfort highly entertaining. Monica led the way and opened the boutique door, ushering us inside. The shop was softly lit and filled wall to wall with things I had never imagined seeing in one place. There were racks of lingerie, dresses, skirts, and specialized garments, along with various padding options designed for shaping outfits. I noticed shelves of books and magazines focused on crossdressing, and toward the back of the store were displays of jewelry, handbags, makeup, and shoes. A tall, broad woman dressed entirely in black, with jet black hair to match, emerged from behind the counter. She greeted us cheerfully, calling us girls, and introduced herself as Denise. She winked at Monica and Betty and joked that she didn't often get groups of women that large in her store, asking if they were shopping for their husbands. Kevin stiffened and replied bluntly that he and I were the husbands. Denise raised an eyebrow and teased that we didn't look like men at all, suggesting that we were far too delicate for that. Her playful tone made me uncomfortable, and Monica noticed immediately. She stepped in and explained firmly that their husbands were participating in a beauty pageant and that we needed items to create a more feminine silhouette. Denise laughed and guided us toward a glass display case filled with different styles of chest forms. I felt uneasy and glanced at Monica, admitting quietly that I wasn't sure about going through with this part. Denise reassured me and encouraged us to at least take a look. Clearly eager to make a sale, she began showing us basic inserts designed to fill bras, followed by heavier silicone options that offered a more realistic shape and weight. Monica suggested I remove my jacket and blouse so we could see how they worked properly. As I did, I kept nervously checking the door, half expecting someone familiar to walk in. Monica chose a more advanced set, and once they were in place, the difference was dramatic. My upper body looked completely different. I put my blouse back on, still feeling self-conscious. Kevin selected a similar set for himself. Monica then had me try on a few wigs, but none of them seemed like an improvement over what we already had at home. Denise was about to show us more items when the door opened and another customer walked in, a man also dressed in women's clothing. My instinct was to hide, but I quickly realized I didn't recognize him and that he was no different from us. He moved through the shop with confidence, clearly comfortable there. I told Denise that we'd just take the chest forms. She rang us up, and we paid. As a bonus, she slipped a couple of short fiction booklets into the bag. I glanced at the other customer and, to my surprise, felt a small surge of pride, thinking that Kevin and I actually looked quite polished by comparison. Denise told us to come back after we won the pageant. I silently promised myself that wouldn't be happening. Once we were back outside, Monica and Betty burst into laughter. Betty teased Kevin, saying she thought he was going to faint when the other customer walked in. Kevin shook his head and said the place had been strange, asking if we could just go home now. The women agreed but decided the evening needed to end with pizza. I went along with it on the condition that Kevin stay dressed so I wouldn't be the only one. The night turned out to be surprisingly fun, and our daughters were delighted to see their dads all dressed up. Over the next 2 weeks, Monica kept me focused and disciplined about the pageant. Almost every night after Grace went to bed, she had me dress up so I'd become completely comfortable wearing women's clothes. One outfit I especially liked was her pleated plaid skirt paired with a slip and blouse. With dark tights, it felt simple, relaxed, and easy to wear. Eventually, the night of the pageant arrived. Monica and I reached the hotel early. 2 rooms had been reserved for the contestants to prepare, and we would change outfits backstage throughout the event. I was sitting at a mirror in a bra, pantyhose, heels, and half-finished makeup when Mrs. Caldwell suddenly walked in. I felt my face flush instantly. She patted my shoulder and told me she knew I'd look wonderful, thanking me for having the courage to participate. As more fathers arrived and began getting ready, it became clear she had hired a professional makeup artist to help anyone who needed it. Most of the men took advantage of that. I hadn't thought I needed help, but once the artist worked on me, I could see a noticeable improvement over my earlier attempts. Before long, I was fully dressed in my black evening gown and ready to go. I looked around at the other contestants. At least 3 of them, including Kevin, looked genuinely impressive. Kevin wore a vintage-style navy silk gown with structured shoulders and a flowing skirt that moved beautifully as he walked. I felt a brief twinge of envy. Another man had borrowed his daughter's prom dress and wore it surprisingly well. The rest looked a bit awkward, but everyone seemed relaxed and in good spirits as we waited for the pageant to begin. The show opened with all of us standing in a row behind the curtain. When it finally swept open, laughter rippled through the room as parents in the audience tried to figure out who was who. One by one, we were called forward to introduce ourselves to our amused supporters. As soon as that was over, the curtain closed again and we hurried backstage to get ready for the talent segment. Monica helped me into her black silk dress, and I picked up my guitar, preparing to go on. I made my way toward the stool, doing my best to move with poise, but my heels betrayed me and I stumbled. The audience laughed, but I managed to steady myself and carry on. I sat down carefully, crossed my legs, held my instrument close, and played Beethoven's Ode to Joy. I played confidently, and it crossed my mind that my small misstep might have actually worked in my favor by winning a bit of sympathy from the judges. After everyone finished their performances, we regrouped backstage to change into our swimwear. I slipped into pantyhose, stepped into Monica's white one-piece swimsuit, and she tied a sarong around my waist. White heels completed the outfit. Most of the men wore modest one-piece suits, though one especially bold contestant chose a bikini. It wasn't the most flattering look, but his confidence earned my respect as he walked across the stage. Once the swimwear round ended, we quickly changed back into our evening gowns. By that point, I was exhausted and ready for the night to be over. We all returned to the stage for the final time and lined up. Mrs. Caldwell addressed the audience, thanking us for our courage and good humor, then announced there would be a runner-up and a winner. When she called my name, I sighed to myself as I stepped forward to accept the runner-up spot. Mrs. Caldwell handed me a bouquet and gave me a congratulatory kiss. Then she announced the winner, Kevin. He blushed as he walked forward in his elegant vintage gown. After a kiss from Mrs. Caldwell, 3 of the school's young teachers stepped up to present him with a sash, tiara, and scepter. I felt a brief pang of jealousy and wondered whether it was simple competitiveness or if I had genuinely enjoyed the whole experience more than I was willing to admit. Maybe there would be another chance someday. Backstage, Monica greeted me with an enthusiastic hug and a kiss. In all the excitement, we realized we'd completely forgotten my tuxedo. I pointed out that I couldn't exactly leave in the jeans I'd arrived in. She told me I'd been a great sport and suggested we go home so I could change properly. I smiled and asked if it would really be that embarrassing to stay dressed as I was for the rest of the evening. She just smiled and kissed me again. Nearby, I saw Kevin changing out of his gown. I congratulated him and told him he'd been amazing. Then I admitted that I'd forgotten my own clothes and planned to remain in character for the rest of the night. He glanced at Betty, looking unsure. She laughed, encouraged him, and handed him his gown so he could put it back on. We decided to make a night of it. Several of the other contestants stayed in their outfits too, and we ended up having a fantastic time. The school moms especially seemed to enjoy the company of the so-called brave dads. Some time has passed since that night. I haven't been back to Denise's shop, and I don't think Kevin has either. Mrs. Caldwell later sent me a thank you note along with a portrait of me in my evening gown. It's actually a very nice photo, and it hangs in our bedroom. Friends still tease me about being in a beauty contest, and I always tell them they're welcome to try it themselves if they think it's so easy. Not long ago, Monica struggled with an outfit because she didn't have the right bra. I kept my comments to myself. But if she ever asked me to enter another pageant, I'd probably hesitate briefly before saying yes without a second thought. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.